Hello, future filmmakers, and welcome to my Illustrator tutorial. Now, you may be wondering what a channel that wants to be, geared towards filmmaking is doing making an Illustrator tutorial. And that's fairly easy to explain. See, a lot of times you may get a job and the client sends you their logo to put in the end or put on the video somewhere. And they send you a logo that's only 250 pixels by 250 pixels. Now, if you're making a HD video, 1080p video, it's still going to be too small for that if you want to blow it up to any size that takes up any appreciable screen real estate. So a lot of times, I'll find myself having to import that into Illustrator and either copying it or tracing it or just remaking it in some form or fashion, so that I can use it in the video and give them a quality product that isn't diminished by this low quality JPEG that they sent. Another reason is because some clients will require specific graphics to be made from scratch for the project that they want done. I find that a lot of times clients will just reach out to a video production house or videographer, cinematographer, not really realizing that there's a difference between what we do and what a graphics designer does. But if you have the ability to do basic things in Illustrator, you might be able to accomplish what they want and be able to provide that service to them, and you can either then upcharge them or just include it in your package, especially starting out where you might not be able to afford to subcontract to a graphics design or anything like that. And the last reason you might need to use Illustrator is because you might need to make an interesting thumbnail for your video, and one of the best places to do that is inside of Illustrator. Now, before we get started, I want you to check the description of the video below. I have a download link for a folder that contains a bunch of project files that we will be using. Let me bring this on over here. So you can see I have a bunch of files here, and that's so that we're all working with relatively the same thing throughout the course of this video. So let me move this over here. So why don't you go ahead, download it, and then open up the oneintroduction.ai Adobe Illustrator file. All right, so now let's all make sure we're all looking at roughly the same layout in After Effects. Now let's make sure we're all looking at roughly the same layout of Illustrator. So let me just get it to the very basic layout, and then we'll go from there. So what I need you to do is go to Window, Workspace, select Essentials, and if Essentials is already selected and your workspace doesn't look like this, I want you to then go down to Reset Essentials. Once you've done that, I want you to go to Toolbars and select Advanced. That'll open up the toolbar a little bit, give us a little bit more options to choose from. And once you have that done, let's go over some of the things that we see here. So here's your libraries. Maybe in another tutorial, I'll go over adding colors and stuff to this. But as you go on, you may find that you work with specific clients more often. Maybe you have a permanent job as a cinematographer or video content producer for a company. You have brand specific colors that you're working with. As you can see here, the one company I work with a lot, they have brand specific colors that I need to work with very often. So I've got them saved under my libraries here. Next, you have your layers panel. Much like Photoshop, you have layers, and you can put different things on different layers, but in Illustrator, most of the time we're working with just a single layer. As you can see here, everything's on one layer. But if you do need to work with multiple layers, just go down here, create new layer, and it creates a new layer. If you have something on a specific layer that you need moved to another layer, you can see when you select it, when you have something selected, notice that there's nothing here now, but once you select something, see I selected the background, a little square pops up here. You can then click and drag that to the layer you want it on. See how now the background that I once had is now on layer 2. I'm gonna undo that. Move the rectangle up there. And then I will move it back. Nope, that didn't take. There we go. So if you have a layer that you want to hide, that you don't want to see anymore, you just click this little eyeball here, turn that off. If you want to see it again, click it and bring it back. If you have a layer that you want to lock, like say maybe you're tracing something, which we'll get into later, you click here and it locks the layer. Now you can no longer manipulate anything on that layer. And finally, we have the properties panel. Now, a lot of older versions of Illustrator don't have this, and so if you don't have a properties panel, that's probably what you're working with, where you're working with an older properties panel or an older version of Illustrator. The properties panel is like a one-stop shop almost. Before, you used to have to click around and open specific windows within Illustrator to do your work. So if you were working with text, you would have to open up a character panel. Or if you were working with shapes, you had to open up a specific transform or appearance panel so that you could change the colors and stuff on it. But the properties panel brings up the most appropriate options for your workspace. So as you can see here, I've got my text selected. So it's got the character panel, paragraph, and area type all up here so that I can just quickly access it. If you have nothing selected, it brings up your documents, some documents options. So I could change the unit of measurement we're working with. If I had multiple artboards, I could select a different artboard. I could bring up a ruler, add a grid, or show the transparency layer so that if I got rid of that background, you're now working with a transparent layer, and this shows you that. Most of the time when I'm working, I have the ruler up. You can opt to have that up or not throughout this tutorial. It kind of helps when lining things up, because if you go up here and you can drag down a line, and so if you want everything within 2 inches, or if you want something, the bottom of something within on that 2-inch line from the top of your workspace, you could drag a line down, and now you know where the 2-inch mark is, and this will even snap to that mark for you, making it a little easier. And then to get rid of it, you just drag it away. And then we have our guides here. So our snap guides, click to hide our smart guides. Our smart guides are that pink line that pops up here. And then down here, we have some preferences. This is the one major one we're going to focus on throughout this tutorial. Go ahead and click it. Click on your rectangle and then go over to stroke and give it a black stroke and maybe up it to 10. So now you have this black stroke. Now say you wanted to resize this rectangle. So you click and resize it down, and the stroke resizes appropriately with that rectangle. So let's undo that. Control Z. Now unselect it and then unselect that option. Now resize your rectangle again. You'll see that the stroke stays the same no matter what size I have this. So I normally just have that selected. And then finally we have our documents set up down here. So we could change some different aspects of our document and preferences. Now if you need to zoom in to specific aspects of your project file, just go over here to the little magnifier or press Z on your keyboard, the Z key. Click that and you get a little magnifier with a plus. Clicking it zooms in to where you're clicking. If you hold the Alt key while you have that tool selected, it becomes a little minus magnifier and it zooms out. Alternatively, press the V key or go up here and select your selection tool. You could hit Control minus or Control plus on your keyboard. Now when you do that, it'll zoom into the center of whatever object you have selected. So if I have this star selected and I zoom in, it'll zoom into the center of the star. And this and that. If you want to zoom out and so that the artboard takes up the whole screen, just hit Control 0 and it centers it and brings this so it takes up the whole screen. Now the way I zoom in and out, and I think most people in Illustrator do, is by holding down the Alt key and just scrolling the scroll wheel on your mouse, and that'll zoom you in and out wherever the mouse is. And then I press Control 0 to recenter my frame. Now say you're zoomed in over here and you are working in something here. You're manipulating something that you need to be zoomed in over here, and you just need to move over a little bit. You can either select the hand tool down here and press H to bring up your hand tool and then click and drag to move over, or select your selection tool again, press down the space bar, brings up your hand tool, and as long as you're holding that space bar, that hand tool is active. Release the space bar and you go back to whatever tool you were working with. Same thing happens if you're using, say, this tool and you need to bring up your selection tool. Press and hold the control key and it brings up your selection tool. So if I'm working with this, making a shape, and I'm like, I need to move it, press and hold the control and move that around. Okay, now I'm gonna go over two tools in this tutorial, and that's the selection tool and the direct selection tool. The selection tool selects an object as a whole. So I've got this rectangle. With the selection tool, I can take the rectangle and move it around. Same with the star down here or the text. Just select it and I move it around. Now, if I want to manipulate a specific aspect of one of these shapes, I'll need the direct selection tool. So I click this, and then I click an anchor point that I want to select, and then click and drag. And it drags around that specific anchor point. And then I've got had some weird artifact in there. Never really saw that before, so I don't know what that is. But yeah, so the direct selection tool enables you to manipulate anchor points individually. So go ahead and play around with that for a minute. Pause these videos anytime you need to. Now, as you're working, you may notice that when you hover over a tool, the name of the tool pops up, so you see direct selection tool there and selection tool there, along with the keyboard shortcut. It's V for the selection tool and A for the direct selection tool. Also, you may notice that some of these tools have little carrots or triangles in the corner, and that just means under that specific button is a list of tools. So if you click and hold here, you'll see you have the rectangle tool, the ellipse tool, polygon tool, star tool, and flare tool. And then if you want to select the rectangle tool, you just release while you're over the rectangle tool. Now you can make rectangles. All right, and that should cover it for everything we need to do about the basics of the layout and some of the tools in Illustrator. Come back next time and we'll get started importing assets and setting up so that we can start drawing inside of Illustrator. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe and click that bell so that you stay up to date to all my latest videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.